For as long as video games have been a thing, there have always been gamers out there hell-bent on breaking them. For exploiting certain mechanics and harvesting particular skills or items, your experience can devolve into something very different to what might have been intended. I'm Scott from WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 character builds that broke recent video games. Number 10, Ida's Sigil Sniper, Far Cry 6. With the ability to freely pick off enemies without them seeing you, sniper builds always have the capability of being overpowered, and few games demonstrate that power better than Far Cry 6. Ida's Sigil is the definitive hero piece of gear behind this build. Obtained after clearing an early treasure location in the Madrugada region, this hardware highlights enemies and animals surrounding you even at nighttime. No more climbing towers and painstakingly scoping out an area. Couple this with a weapon like the MVP.50, a ranged weapon that when maxed out is capable of shooting down helicopters and armored personal vehicles by itself, and the potential of this build becomes obvious. With 5 attachment slots and 2 further mod slots, it's one of the most customizable scoped weapons in the game. Even at its base level, we have remarkable damage output and a solid handling score, as well as a very respectable 43 RPM rate of fire. Super easy to obtain, you only need your guerrilla garrison to be level 3 before you can buy it from a storeman. Number 9, Corpse Explosion Necromancer, Diablo 4. Necromancers are the most overpowered class in Diablo 4, with skills like Decompose and Reap having the power to completely eviscerate most enemies right out the gate. However, where things get completely outlandish is with the class's ability to turn corpses into active bombs that you can launch at opponents. The Corpse Explosion skill is part of Corpse Cluster on the Necromancer tree, and is easily the most fun thing in the game. Corpse Explosion can be upgraded across 5 ranks, dealing up to 70% multipliers on all damage. There's also the opportunity for players to enhance this skill, widening the radius of the AoE explosion, dealing more damage to enemies that are stunned or slowed, or even transferring across as a darkness skill to stack shadow damage too. The ability only becomes available with the Corpse and Macabre level of the skill tree, making it more of a mid to late game unlock. Still, skills such as Decompose should be more than enough to keep a Necromancer build ticking over until it becomes available. One of the most scalable and versatile AoE builds in Diablo 4, Corpse Explosion has become instrumental in Detonator, Blightlord, Bloodshadow, and Spirit Bomb Necromancer builds. Number 8, SANDEVISTAN Samurai, Cyberpunk 2077. In CDPR's divisive but honestly pretty incredible today 2020 release, SANDEVISTAN is a status effect that can be used by players to slow down time. It'll increase crit chance and damage, and can be upgraded to increase duration and decrease cooldown. It's a skill that's intended to work alongside melee builds, but it becomes overpowered with a particular samurai setup. The SANDEVISTAN Samurai build requires you unlock the throwing knife ability. These projectiles will inflict poison damage and a large ninjutsu damage buff for 6 seconds, which a katana like the Jinshu Maru is more than able to work with, ravaging entire crews of enemies or cyber psycho bosses before they can even react. SANDEVISTAN Samurai doesn't hinge on one item or perk to work, meaning players can stick to it throughout their playthrough. Number 7, Death Eater, Hogwarts Legacy. Role-playing as a Death Eater is Hogwarts Legacy's version of a Renegade run in Mass Effect, and it's also one of the most OP builds in the game. Death Eaters have the ability to completely demolish multiple enemies by applying the Cursed status in a showdown. In order to do this, players need to learn the 3 unforgivable spells, Imperio, Crucio, and Avada Kedavra, using them as frequently as possible. Mastering these is a pretty endgame requirement, but prioritizing cooldown means they're almost always available, with the cheaper Expelliarmus spell an alternative while waiting for a recharge. Focus potions are also a great way of reducing cooldown too. With each of the 3 curses dealing different types of damage, the opportunities to scale and cover all bases makes for a truly devastating way to play. Number 6, Blood Mage Necromancer, Divinity Original Sin 2. Necromancers are undoubtedly the most powerful class in Divinity Original Sin 2, but there are a number of builds that specifically utilize their skills better than others. The best of these is the Blood Mage Necromancer, both a game-breakingly overpowered and extremely fun way to play. This build puts a heavy emphasis on a Necromancer's intelligence and wits in order to deal a huge amount of critical damage with their abilities. It's a passive type of build, but one that's both scalable and incredibly well-rounded. What makes the Blood Mage Necromancer overpowered is the ability for a player to heal themselves, their magic armor, and their physical armor too. It essentially takes worrying about HP out of the equation, as you're able to easily recover from any damage. In order to unlock the potential of this build, players should invest in intelligence, constitution, and wit, spending all of your skill points on Necromancer, Hydrosophist, and especially Warfare. Even though this is mainly a support-heavy approach, it does come with abilities that more than pack a punch. Bloodstorm, Bloodsucker, and Raining Blood, shout out to Slayer, are all givens, with area attack of effect skills, Grasp of the Starved bringing it all together. Number 5. MOHGWYN'S Sacred Spear Bandit, Elden Ring. Bleed effects have been infamous across Elden Ring ever since the game's release, and despite multiple attempts from Software to curb that power through patches and nerfs, it's still the go-to. MOHGWYN'S Sacred Spear's Blood Boon Ritual weapon skill has the potential to deal up to 10,000 points of damage, which is more than capable of killing bosses without draining all your focus points. What also makes MOHGWYN'S Sacred Spear so game-breaking for bandit classes is the fact it's a piercing weapon, meaning you can wield a shield alongside. There are also immense opportunities for scaling the build across the game, with weapons like Eleonora's Poleblade and Rivers of Blood even more powerful with good investment in Arcane. The build is obviously not so effective against enemies that don't bleed, but this is one of the best builds for exploiting one of the most overpowered mechanics in the game. MOHGWYN'S Sacred Spear can be found by trading Remembrance of the Blood Lord with Enya after players have defeated Morg, Lord of Blood. That's a lot of blood. Did John Moxley write this? Number 4. Stealth Stalker, Horizon Forbidden West. This build was so ridiculously game-breaking that Guerrilla made it one of their first big nerfs following the release of Horizon Forbidden West. And yet, even in its balanced form, it's still one of the most powerful ways of playing the game. The Stealth Stalker build revolves around the combination of the Stealth Stalker Valor Surge skill with the Forge Fault Sharpshot bow. Fully leveled up, the Valor Surge has the potential to deal up to 200% extra damage to unaware enemies. And when combined with the Forge Fault bow, the Braced Shot ability, and the Nora Thunder armor, players quickly discovered they could do 10,000 damage in one hit. This one-shotting of almost all the game's machines was not something the developers were ever going to allow, but even the Stealth Stalker's post-nerf stats are still mighty impressive. 200% extra damage is now reduced to 50%, so you'll have to pepper enemies more and stick to the shadows to really maximize damage potential. Regardless, shout out to that first wave of players that broke a PlayStation first-party game wide open. Number 3. Blessed Whirlwind Bow, Immortals Phoenix Rising. In Immortals Phoenix Rising, a genuinely awesome, recommendable Ubisoft game for once, the devs gave players a whole arsenal's worth of heavenly abilities intended to assist you across a playthrough. However, thanks to just how souped up many of them become, you might miss the specific skills that makes Immortals a walk in the park. Bows are already overpowered in the game, and the Whirlwind is the best in the business with its mid-air charge time. Bunny hopping around the game practically makes firing the bow instantaneous, and when it's combined with Athena's third blessing, it will cause opposing enemies and any others in the surrounding area to be struck by powerful lightning bolts. These bolts do heavy damage, and the fact that players have the chance to bypass the intended charge requirement makes the whole thing brutal as hell. On top of this, the reflex shot upgrade slows time whilst falling with a bow drawn, allowing players using the Blessed Whirlwind bow to avoid taking any damage whatsoever, all while keeping hordes of enemies at bay. Number 2. The Way of the Raven, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Since its reboot with Origins, the Assassin's Creed series became much more focused on role-playing elements, and that continued with the release of Valhalla in 2020. With hundreds of perks branching across 3 different skill trees, the possibilities for building a character are almost endless. However, one of these trees stands out as massively more effective than the others. The Way of the Raven acts as the stealthy way of playing Valhalla, and the ability to take down entire fortresses without ever having to fight any enemies is OP in the best way possible for an Assassin's Creed game. Skills such as Advanced Assassinations allow players to take down high-level targets instantly, while Breakfall and Brush with Death grants you the ability to correct movements or slow down time with a successful dodge. What's more, the Way of the Raven has so much more adaptability than the other 2 skill trees in the game, still allowing players to wield a weapon like the Warhammer. This powerful melee weapon gives you the ultimate escape if a stealth approach does fail, providing a hit-and-run backup option that other builds lack. Number 1. ELECTROPYLON Driver, Returnal. Returnal is a game that likes to flex itself as one of the most grueling experiences on the market. However, by simply picking up one item, all of this infamous difficulty goes out the window. Found naturally in the Echoing Ruins region, the ELECTROPYLON Driver is undoubtedly the most powerful weapon in the game. The weapon fires conduits that can attach to surfaces, producing high damage webs that create potentially huge AoE fields. In most games, heavy area of effect perks are normally the ones most prone to game-breaking glitches and overpowered combos. And whilst there isn't anything technically broken about the ELECTROPYLON Driver, it's one of those items that, when found, ensures you won't waste your time with anything else. It works with any type of character, and its powerful pylons will drain the health of any enemy type, continuing to inflict damage even if you run away to heal, or you just want to watch your enemies melt from afar. The ELECTROPYLON Driver has no downsides and completely takes away a lot of the frustration that's part of the territory with Returnal. Next up, I'm going to recommend mine and Josh's breakdown of the best games of 2023 no one's playing. There's a PS1 throwback horror game, some Lovecraftian fishing, and what can only be described as Final Fantasy meets Amplitude. Thank you all for listening. I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com, and I'll see you there.